I'm Tom, and welcome to episode 3 of the Gym Owners Forum podcast. As with everything we do at the Gym Owners Forum, it's always trying to get as much information from the people that we speak with on a day-to-day basis and get that information to you guys, whether it be through our social media, our free events that we do, or our podcast episodes. And today, this podcast episode is no different. Well, it's slightly different, actually. I thought it'd be good to get a bit of one-on-one time with each of the speakers that spoke at the event in Dublin and get a bit of information as to who they were and give my kind of take on what they spoke about and break it down a bit. If you want to see the full interviews and the full talks, feel free to check the QR code on somewhere on the video or go down to the link in our description where you can find the full videos. But yeah, without further ado, we'll move on to our first speaker, who was Danny Lennon of Sigma Nutrition. So Danny was the first speaker on the day, and he's the founder of Sigma Nutrition. And Sigma Nutrition are a science-based nutrition research and education provider for people in the fitness industry. And if you love podcasts, he's also the host of Sigma Nutrition Radio, which is a really interesting podcast that dives into a wide variety of different topics. So I definitely recommend checking that out as well. While gym owners, I'm sure, do understand the importance of nutrition for its members, what Danny's trying to do is actually change the narrative that exercise is going to be the thing that makes you healthy and try and create a more holistic approach for gyms to provide to its members by, putting that focus on mental health, nutrition, support, positive body image and kind of positive reinforcement. So making going to the gym a habit and a healthy habit more so than, something you dread and you've got to go to after work. Now, the benefit of this for gym owners is actually then members positively reinforced to go to the gym. So then they want to keep going and they enjoy it rather than it being something they go to because, they're scared of looking fat or losing muscle. So enough from me telling you about what Danny thinks, and maybe Danny can actually let you know for himself. Danny, thank you very much for attending the Gym Owners Workshop 2024. First off, I guess, how have you found it so far?
Great, yeah. Everyone's been really welcoming, first of all, but also the people that I've got to meet here, some of the people listening to the talk, coming up after asking some questions, really interesting stuff and hearing their experiences. Also, the setup has been great. And so, yeah, a great event so far.
Just to kind of give a bit of context to everyone that's going to be watching, what is Sigma Nutrition? I guess give a very quick kind of breakdown of what you spoke about as well.
Sure. In short, Sigma Nutrition is a company that creates educational content around nutrition science primarily. So aimed at practitioners, whether that's dietitians, GPs, health and fitness professionals, talking about the science of nutrition and what we see in the research. My talk today was around messaging within the fitness industry with a focus on a few core issues. I would think potential harms of weight loss interventions, issues around weight stigma more broadly in the industry, and then third, what this might mean for body image concerns and how we market and put out messages within the fitness industry and things for coaches to be aware of.
To be honest, it was a very interesting talk, and I guess before I sort of asked my questions that I had, you get to, I guess, get a couple of the ideas that people were asking you after you talk.
So some of those relate to one of the key dilemmas that I wanted to talk about at the start of the talk, which is that there are many coaches that want to help people, want to do things ethically, have heard about potential harms of messages we put out or promoting weight loss all the time, and want to try and avoid some of the real negative stuff, but at the same time also want to make a living and have a productive business, and knowing that most people are going to come to a gym or look for a personal trainer, oftentimes with the goal of changing their body composition. So that's this kind of real dilemma. And so much of the questions relate to, well, how do I go about this? Or what might this mean for my business? Is it going to suffer? And so on. And there's some really interesting questions within that. But mainly it's about how do we work with someone who maybe has been told that they need to follow a certain type of plan or is coming looking for a diet plan or a 6-week transformation, but we want to promote something more long-term that's really going to help them in a health sense. How do we bridge that gap? That's supposed to be the theme of most of those questions.
Yeah, okay. And I guess that kind of leads on nicely to my questions as well. Obviously, something that I kind of visit a lot of gym owners sort of as part of my day-to-day job, and I think a lot of the stuff that I often see with them is a lot of stuff I preach, actually, I guess, if you want to put it like that, is like community and how important community is within the gym. And I guess nutrition and kind of the prerogative that gyms are kind of pushing, because I know that people kind of say, like, if you're not big, you're not it, I guess, is right. The thing. So how would you say that kind of nutrition and kind of the prerogative that the gym's pushing on people, how does that affect the community within the gym, and how can you kind of help to change that as well?
And this is such a fundamental part because most people accept that a huge part of their gym culture or the benefit is going to be the community aspect to it. And a lot of people are trying to build that. And even broadly in the fitness industry, there's a community aspect. When someone feels they are part of the fitness industry versus outside of it, that is what people want. It's why people get interested in it. When people start going into the fitness industry, it's why people are going to elevate towards certain types of clothing, certain types of brands that are important. Like there's all this part that is part of our identity and community when we're in that. And I suppose part of some of the barrier for other people then is if we are holding up certain images or certain aesthetics or certain lifestyles that this is what fitness is and anything else therefore isn't, then we're giving the people that unless you can attain this certain physique, or unless you train with the intensity or frequency I do, or unless you have these certain behaviors, then what you're doing isn't really fitness. And so I think that's part of a barrier because it's less inclusive, but also from a gym owner perspective, it's shutting you off to a huge bunch of people who could be part of your community, but maybe are fearing that because they think they don't fit that certain mold. So it's about thinking about what culture we want to create and what we actually mean by being part of this community, broadly within fitness, but secondarily within my particular gym or facility or online coaching service. What does it mean to be part of this community? Who does that include? And sometimes without us realizing, we're alienating some people because all the things we talk about and all the things we promote and all the images we post are one particular thing that is separate from what this person feels they can identify with.
It plays into the kind of psychological, like positive reinforcement. Like people are much more likely to do something and follow something if they're like positively reinforced to do it as opposed to negatively. And I don't go to the gym because I like hate myself. I go to the gym because I like the feeling that I get after going there. So what would you say, I guess, are some of the practical things that gym can actually start to do? So let's say I'm a gym that I have this kind of, get big or go home thing going on in my gym, and I want to change that, and I want to kind of become more kind of community focused and start pushing positive reinforcement onto people. What are some of the sort of practical things that I can do to actually achieve that within my gym?
Sure. There's probably two levels to this. One is the most foundational piece that probably a lot of gyms are already doing, is asking this question of, well, what is the actual culture we want, first of all, in an ideal setting? What values do we aspire to that we want to promote in people? And therefore, what type of community we want to build? Once someone has the idea and then says, okay, well, I want this type of, or at least I say that I want this type of culture and community and so on, and these types of people in my gym, how can we have messages that are going to not only speak to them, but not actively push them away? And this is not even done on an intentional basis, but if we're saying we want to appeal to a large number of people who can positively improve their life and get healthier and don't have to go all in on everything, but every post we have on social media or every image in our gym is literally just of the people with the most extreme aesthetic, that everything is of the elite level bodybuilders, for example, and all our posts are about our physique and how dedicated we are and so on, that's okay if that's the demographic you want to speak to. If you are claiming you want to have a broader one that is getting more people involved in your community, that's probably not going to be resonating, first of all. And second is also giving them an idea of two things. Goals that are not attainable, because you're saying, okay, do you want to look, the underlying message of a post of someone's physique is like, if you want to look more like this, I can help you. Right? This is your problem, you don't look like this, I can help you. That is probably not going to be attainable for the vast majority of people for a variety of reasons. And second is probably not the thing we necessarily want to be promoting in that particular case. Now, if someone has a facility that is only for bodybuilders who want to compete actively, you're going to have a different type of messaging, and actually all those other things are actually going to resonate more.
Yeah.
So the first thing is getting clear on what is the community, what is the culture, and then what types of messages and posts. And then it's about taking stock of what do I currently do. So you can go through your marketing material, you can go through the messages on the wall in your gym, you can go through your feed and say, do these things actually resonate with the values that I have and the gym culture I want to create? Or without realizing it, is there a kind of a disconnect here? And that evaluation probably is the first step, I would say.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, I mean, just keep it short and sweet. I think just finally, is there any sort of key takeaways that you'd sort of suggest to gym owners, maybe kind of start that evaluation process?
So I would say first is taking stock of what are we currently doing? Why are we saying certain things or having certain messages, or what is our ad copy look like, or our website? What are the messages we're putting out? And why is the reason for that? Is it simply because, well, that's the way I was told to do it, and that's the way everyone does it? That may mean that it's not actually fitting with what you actually want to create for your gym culture. So first, taking stock of why am I doing this? And then second, looking at maybe challenging some beliefs that we've already had, i.e. that traditionally, for a long time in the fitness industry, the belief is that in order to get more clients and more people into the gym, I need to sell them on the problem they have, is see if that fits, and then from there, start thinking about, as I put out messages, is this reinforcing the values that I want for my gym, the culture, and more broadly, is it having a positive influence without necessarily alienating people?
In that case, Danny, thank you very much for your time. Really enjoyed to talk today, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks so much.
Cheers very much. Thank you. If you'd like to hear more from Danny, we have linked resources to Sigma Nutrition in the podcast description. But without further ado, on to our second speaker of the day, who was Toby Wassell. He's the owner of the Fit Club and head of business development at Ashbourne Membership Management. Toby's journey as a gym owner is quite a unique one. He actually had the advantage of working with Ashbourne and working with gym owners and customers day to day to help them develop a product that, made the running of their gym more effective and more efficient. From then, he actually decided to take the plunge into the world of gym ownership, and he took what is now the Fit Club Redditch from a club that was hovering around 400 members to a successful 2,000 plus member club now. So then it's no surprise that Toby's talk was about growing and scaling your business. Now, I thought Toby's talk was really interesting actually because he took what seems like quite a kind of tough task and actually just broke it down using anecdotes and questions and just simple tasks that you can do on the day-to-day that gym owners could then take home, follow, and implement into their own business. After his talk, I wanted to dig into some of the methods that he had found useful himself in getting member feedback and automating his business processes. So that was kind of what I tried to focus on in the interview, and I'll let Toby take it from here. So, Toby, thank you very much for your talk today at the Gym Owners Forum. It was a very interesting one on scaling the business, and as one of your actual first-time talks, I think it was actually fantastic to watch. So first off, I think just to kind of get an easy feel for your thoughts on the event, what you think of today, and any kind of key takeaways from it.
I think it's fantastic to see so many gym owners all in one room. Like, so many different facilities are represented at this event. To see everyone kind of interacting together, sharing ideas for how their clubs work, what works for them, what doesn't, is massively positive, and it shows where the industry is at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's good about your kind of viewpoint is that you work for Ashbourne, obviously, so you have that kind of unique perspective of being a gym owner, but also kind of, seeing how the sausage is made kind of behind the scenes as well and actually putting that into your gym. Would you say that this actually gives you an advantage when running your gym? And what would you say are the sort of bits of information you'd like to pass on to people who maybe don't have that advantage?
I think because with my job I need to know quite in depth about the software systems that we sell at Ashbourne. That helps me get the most out of the software systems at the club. And then from Ashbourne's perspective, we can pass back a lot of information about how we can better improve our software systems for gyms. So it kind of works both ways, but there's definitely nice synergies there.
When speaking with gym owners, this is something you actually touched on in your talk a little bit. Social listening is a kind of big part of getting improvements into the gym, knowing what's kind of wrong with your gym and that sort of thing. Is that right?
I wouldn't say it's a massive part, but it can be a really useful additional thing to do if you're doing the other kind of feedback methods well. Kind of getting people when they're almost not realising that they're being listened to, hence social listening, and so you get an unbiased level of feedback. So you learn things about your gym that people might not say to your face, essentially.
You touched on a couple different methods of getting feedback to the gym, so surveys and social listening and things like that. What would you say that are actually the most effective ways in your gym that you've managed to get feedback from members and why they were effective?
Both the long and short form surveys have a place, so the long form for getting really rich data kind of once a year, or in our case if we're planning a big project we'll put out that big survey, ask for loads of data from our stakeholders, and then we'll use that to formulate what we do with the plan. In the short form, just over time, seeing whether certain instructors are getting good ratings and looking at those trends. And then the other really useful one is mystery shopping, so looking at whether processes are being followed, getting mystery shoppers in and finding out through a questionnaire that's kind of customised to our processes.
Have you ever been an undercover boss?
An undercover boss? I'm a boss every day.
No need for being undercover. Toby, thank you very much. Just to finish up, I would just like to get a final key bit of information that you think that every gym owner out there should know.
Processes and implementing processes. A lot of work at the start, so setting up software systems and things like that. But in the long term, it's going to save you time, and it's going to mean that you can focus on other areas of your business and other areas of expansion.
The old saying, no pain, no gain, always rings true. Toby, thank you very much. We hope you enjoy the rest of your time at the Gym Owners Forum. Something that you'll see on our socials that I discuss a lot and I feel is very important as a key to success for gyms is automating your business processes to save you time and focusing on building that community in your gym. Now, Toby is a prime example of this and he's also a great believer in it. So as you can tell from his talk, this was kind of what he was trying to focus on and attribute his success to. But still, one of the key things there is actually implementing it into your business and not burning out, which leads very nicely on to our next talk with the PT coach, Phil Lerney. Now, Phil started off as a PT, quickly becoming one of the most sought-after coaches in the country, helping to train and coach top-level actors, sports people, and business leaders. Phil's talk focused on avoiding burnout, creating healthy lifestyle habits, and also just finding your optimum work level. And not only when running your business, but also you could take a lot of this information into everyday life as well. So the great thing about Phil, as you'll see from his talk and also his interview, is that he laces a lot of what he says with objective science to really help you understand the reason as to why he's saying what he's saying. Now, during the interview, he explained in greater depth finding a balance between work and life, as well as realizing your optimum level of performance, and also just staying in that optimum level without crashing. So without spoiling anything further, Phil, take it away. Phil, thank you very much for attending Gym Owners Workshop 2024. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Your speech actually was really interesting, actually. It was something you can kind of take into life as well as just your general business sense. Firstly, I just wanted to talk about technology and the role it plays. So what role does technology play in enhancing and sabotaging our productivity? How can we kind of find the balance with this?
It's understanding its application. This is what I always talk about education in the same sense, is that when you look at education, there's kind of the formal element of education where we know this does this and this does this, but what does that ultimately mean for a coach at the end of it? A degree in sport and exercise science. I came out with all this incredible knowledge, but the application of that knowledge was the bit that I then needed to figure out. So when it comes to technology, it's akin to the same thing, is that we've got all this great technology, but it's the application of it. And if we understand the application, the correct application, so for example, when we look at AI, AI is hugely useful, but AI, people are using it in a lazy sense right now. They're utilising it to do things they can't be bothered to do, rather than using it as something that complements what they do and makes things more efficient. It's taking that preparation and that time to ask AI the right question. So I always say it's the iRobot analogy, which nobody will understand unless they're of a certain age. But there was a movie with Will Smith with iRobot, and it came to the end of it. It was all about you have to ask the right questions. And I think technology it's all to do with application. It isn't something that's just there to be the lazy man's solution. It's got to be something that if you understand it, you understand its application, how to use it and utilise it properly, huge impact.
I mean, not to go on too much of a tangent then, I guess, actually, but is AI something that you're kind of starting to use and apply in business a little bit more, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple levels that we'll utilise it on. It's the sort of thing where we can collate a lot of data and a lot of information very, very quickly. So AI can be used to produce spreadsheets and collate ideas together, bring together a fundamental idea of something. So if we come out with a concept of something or something relatively new that we want to bring out, we can ask AI, for example, as to what would be the key headers based off the science that we understand. And it will give us the key headers, which then we can expand on. But AI as a tool to do something, again, like I said, to do something you don't want to do is ridiculous, because then we lose the personal aspect to it, we lose the human element to it, which again, the human element is kind of what a lot of people carve their business out around, is that we always talk in personal training about what's the most personal thing about personal training. It's you, it's the coach. It's the the way that you handle people, the way that you talk to people, your soft skills, your ability to communicate, all these things that make you you. Ultimately, if you've got a client who doesn't enjoy being trained by you, it's not something you can necessarily train out of yourself. it's something that you just need to accept that maybe you're incompatible from a communication perspective.
Talking about kind of communication and also, I guess, like productiveness and things of that nature, is kind of ADHD, these are all kind of buzzwords, I guess, but mental health, ADHD, kind of neurodiversity, are these any sort of things that you have any kind of understanding on?
We do a lot of work around the sleep and the nervous system, which was kind of what the topic was to some degree today. When we talk about the nervous system, levels of arousal are something that, particularly in the neurodivergent population, are something that they're ultimately trying to regulate. If you look at, and again, the slides that I brought up a slide about optimal states of arousal, which when we look at somebody who takes, for example, a stimulant, it can either take them to an optimal state of arousal or it can take them beyond it, depending on what their sensitivity is or depending on what their nervous system capacity is at. So if you've got somebody who's highly stressed, got a bunch of financial issues, got a bunch of personal issues, something like a central nervous system stimulant has a massive magnified effect. Whereas somebody who's very chilled out, got no worries, they've got no concern, the central nervous system stimulant obviously has a slightly different effect. So what we've got to remember is that the effect of something on you is all relative to the situation that it's put into. So when we talk about neurodivergence, we're looking at this kind of window of tolerance. Fundamentally, that window that you've got with neurodivergence is very, very small, which means something. It could be noise, it could be light, it could be too many people around, it could be enough to send someone into that state of hyperarousal. So yeah, it's definitely an area that we're interested in, we're exploring.
There's actually, they're starting to find out that there's like a higher percentage of people in the UK that are actually, across the globe, that are actually neurodivergent and kind of have a higher level of ADHD. And one of the sort of main symptoms of that is unproductivity. What would your advice be for someone that's kind of struggling with unproductivity? They feel like they can't really break the cycle of that.
Ultimately, when we look at somebody who goes into a state of hyperarousal, so hyperarousal is almost like you feel super positive about everything, you're super productive, you almost overkill. You're working like, if you've seen something about Mary, it's a bit like when she's hoovering up.
Yeah.
And you go into that state of almost overload where everything's very fluent, everything's flowing and everything's great. But the problem is if you're at that heightened state of arousal, that is going to be followed by a dip, like a huge dip. And when you get into that huge dip, that's when the unproductivity kicks in. Instead of trying to look for these super highs to get us going and keep us super aroused, super in this state of, almost hyper productivity, what we've got to understand is that if we can keep ourselves in this middle ground, we might not be getting that hyper productivity, but we're getting a consistent level of high productivity. And it's this thing of, what are people doing in business to do that? Ultimately we end up with people with sleep problems because they overutilize central nervous system stimulants, caffeine probably being the most notable one, and they utilize caffeine to push themselves into a state of hyperarousal. If you're in a state of hyperarousal, very negative about stuff, people then utilize caffeine again to try and get them out of that state and into either the middle ground or the upper ground. The problem you've got to remember is that if you put something into the upper ground akin to like blood glucose, if I want to eat something that's super high in sugar, you're going to get this state of loads of energy. But I've got to realise that that's going to be followed by a state of crash. And it's a bit like, if you get somebody who goes into diabetic shock, the instant thing that you've got to do is give them something high glycemic, high in sugar, that's going to get their blood glucose rapidly. The problem is, if you then just leave it at that, they're going to crash again. So you've always got to follow that up with something that's going to put them into that middle ground, which is, a stable blood glucose level, and normally that's just a combined meal, proteins, carbs, fats, just a normal meal. So you get them out of trouble using the sugar, and this is kind of what people do with caffeine. They get themselves out of trouble because they're tired or they're fatigued or they're in this really negative state. I always talk about it like it's people on your shoulders. There's a positive voice and there's a negative voice, and the problem is when they drop into that state of hypoarousal, which is that drop following that hyperarousal, you get that voice on your shoulder going, no, you can't do this, very negative.
Finally, just generally for all gym owners, it's this question we've asked all our interviewees so far, just one sort of key takeaway, one key bit of advice that you think all gym owners should be aware of.
It's all well and good coming to conferences like this, but if you don't go away and apply anything. I've been I've been educating for 20 years now. I've seen people at seminars and events, and they come and it's all this information, but then they leave and do nothing with it and applied it, rather than just coming along, listening, just taking it all in, and then, and his business right now is flying. And I said, look, congratulations on your business, he's doing great. He goes, something, he goes, I just applied what you told me 10 years ago. He goes, but I just applied it 2 years ago. There's so much valuable information from events like these But there's so many people who step away and they'll have a notebook full of information that they then close, events done, get home, put it on the side, carry on with what they are used to or what they like, because that's the way we've always done it. But you'll still see gyms, and in 10 years, the gyms that didn't move on it are going to go, I wish I'd listened. There's no point in asking for advice and then totally ignoring it.
No, I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much, Phil.
Very well.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. So, there you have it. Just a quick snapshot of some of the speakers on the day and what they spoke about and some of the information that they thought was really important for business owners to know. Now, we have a load more content coming out from the Gym Owners Forum, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled from that. If you want any more information on the speakers or what they spoke about, make sure to check the link in the description of the podcast, or also head to our website, and we will see you on the next Gym Owners Forum podcast.